How do you feel about graveyards? Personally, I think there's nothing quite like the peace of an old country churchyard on a warm summer's day. And old gravestones can be fascinating and have great stories to tell if one can delve hard enough. That's what Dr. Sayan Dey did in his home city of Kolkata. Dr. Day is an historian, and his research into the city's colonial past led him to unearth the stories of some of the Scottish women who lived and died there in the days of the Raj. This was for a short factual film he made called Voices of the Dead, a documentary research on the Scottish women of Calcutta. He told me that he's a great fan of graveyards.
Yes, totally, Jenny. And the interesting part is that one thing that came across my mind, because just to let you know, a very brief background about this, that why did I indulge myself at all with this particular research aspect, is that it actually serves as a prelude, I must say, to one of the research projects that I did in 2000, back in 2018, and it was based on the Anglo-Indian women in the city of Kolkata. And while I was doing that particular research, consistently I was encountering historical dimensions that where the Scottish women also played a very, very crucial role. And the Anglo-Indian community is not just the British, but also indulges the Scottish and the Irish as well. But usually, when we indulge with the Anglo-Indians, we mostly see it's the British who are being looked upon as Anglo-Indians. So it is that particular reason, while doing that project, that actually motivated me to delve into this particular project work based on the Scottish women. And this is one major reason that why I involved myself in working with the Scottish women of Kolkata.
So, how did you stumble across this? By visiting graveyards?
Yes, so this is, let me tell you, this is one of the weirdest hobbies I have, like in my life, like visiting graveyards, just sitting
Skulking
there.
around the graveyards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to let you know, like, I often invite my friends to come and meet me, and when they say that where would you like to meet, and I tell them in one of the graveyards, and they're like a bit surprised. They think that
I'm
I'm
not.
kind of
I'm not.
crazy
I'm
or
not
something.
surprised. They must think. They must think you're just slightly strange.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find the graveyards fascinating in so many ways, because I feel like that once I walk inside any graveyard, and especially these ancient graveyards like 100 years, 200 years, or more older than that, and we have ample of those in our city with respect to graveyards belonging to the Chinese people, graveyards belonging to the Armenians, graveyards belonging to the Scottish, the Anglo-Indians, the British, the World War graveyards, and so many fascinating places. The moment I just walk in the graveyard, I just feel like it is like a time machine that is taking me back to those days. I can feel like the floating images coming in front of me. And it's such a fascinating place where the air smells so much of the past. And the gravestones, and the writings, and the stone etchings, and the paintings, and the sketches, and whatever you just see around in the graveyard, it just tells you so many stories. And also, being a student of history is just, fascinates me so much.
Well, I'm actually not at all surprised because when I visit a graveyard in this country, I always look for the oldest gravestones, and if they happen to sort of date from the time of Shakespeare or something like that, then you can really let your imagination go, can't you? But unearthing the stories of these forgotten Scottish women, just starting from their gravestones, that really must have been quite a challenge for you.
Totally, Jenny. It was very challenging because, just to tell you a brief story, the first thing that I did when I entered the Scottish cemetery is that I visited the office and to locate the names of the women whom I would like to focus my stories on. So that's what I did first. And just to let you know, I shortlisted a group of like 23, 24 women, and I also noted down the numbers of the graveyard. And when I just walked in, it was such a massive challenge to locate them because, very unfortunately, due to lack of maintenance, you see the graveyards lie in a totally dilapidated state. And you see in some of the gravestones, the names have vanished. In some of the gravestones, you see the numbers have vanished. And you literally have to go walk into the grasses, you have to remove the grass, figure out. Sometimes I just took a sheet of paper, put it on the gravestone, took a pencil, sketched on the sheet of paper to figure out what is there at all on the gravestone. Due to lack of maintenance, it is not visible. So there were these kind of challenges which I obviously encountered while shortlisting the name of women and trying to figure out on whom I should focus my research works upon.
And so because of course they're added to it, the tropical climate would not be kind to those gravestones, but once you'd pinpointed your women, what sort of contribution did you find that they had actually made in the colonial period?
So yes, this is really amazing to see that usually when we talk about or indulge with this very phenomenon of reading the European colonial past in India, the central focus or the by default focus is on the men, with a very few names of few women coming up in the forefront, which always actually intrigued me to understand that history is not always about his stories, but also about her stories as well. So this very patriarchal domination, this very men-centric perspective of understanding histories has always been very problematic to me. So when I was looking into the gravestones and I went around to look at the stories, I could see that very interestingly there have been that how Scottish women played a very important role in establishing schools for girls, working as leapers in the hospitals, working as nurses, then, as piano tuners, then as school teachers, then as, working in the churches. And they have been holding so many important posts. But what usually we see, the representation of the history is that usually it is presented as if they have nothing more than accompanists, as if they just accompanied their husbands to serve them, to help them, to give company to them. So this is one of the major one of the major aspect that came out of this research, that they also played a pivotal role in expanding the colonial empire in Bengal.
And so you in a way then are helping to give them back their rightful place in history.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. One thing, Jenny, is that what I always believe is that when we indulge in a study, whether we are doing it for the sake of appreciation or criticism, it is only understood once we indulge in the study. But what is important is, what is really dangerous, I feel, is a half-baked research, which I have been a victim of, and like me, many people have been, because we are not told the entire history. We are just familiarized with certain selected portions of it, which I think is very dangerous and problematic.
Because, of course, we all tend to think of history, and we're taught it at school as these are facts. But in fact, it's an interpretation, a lot of it, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, it depends that who is writing the history, who is narrating the history. And it actually opens up gateways for so many other discourses, so many other forms of knowledge systems, like who is actually claiming that this is authentic history and this is not an authentic form of history. The power relations, the social positions, the geographical locations, the racial factors, and so many other dimensions that actually come to the forefront when we indulge or when we delve into these kind of aspects.
Absolutely. And of course, who is writing the history for whom? But Shan, of course, to the colonizers, what they did, often with very much missionary type zeal, these Scotswomen would have thought of it as being beneficial to the people they'd colonized, even though, of course, with historic post-colonial hindsight, it wasn't. But was some of the good works that they did in Calcutta, actually helpful?
Absolutely. I mean, we, as on the one side, we cannot deny this fact that the colonizers tried to present their project of European colonization as a benevolent act. But on the other side, we also can't deny the fact that how much they have contributed, especially if I talk about the Scottish women, how much they have contributed towards establishing schools for girls, and how much also they have contributed, if I just take one example, to improve the condition of the local girls who were bogged down with the problem, these massive challenges of the patriarchy, the traditional indigenous patriarchal structure, with they are not allowed to go to the school, they have to remain at home, they were just regarded as reproductive units only to give birth to children and take care of the households. They are expected to remain subjected to the tortures of their husbands. So obviously, I mean, we can't deny the fact that they have massively contributed towards transforming certain very problematic mindsets of the otherwise indigenous traditional structure of India. But also what is important for us to know is also not to ignore the other side, that this act of benevolence came with an intention of colonization, which is also another side of my story, which I also very consciously highlight through this particular documentary research.
Well, the discussion about the role of women traditionally in India, that is a whole nother can of worms, isn't it? A whole nother discussion. So now, do you feel that you have pacified at least some of the Calcutta Scottish ghosts?
That's a great that's an interesting question, Jenny. I'm sure they would be happy. I'm sure they would be happy. The next time I go to the Scottish cemetery, I'm going to receive a lot of blessings from them. I have to check that out. If I sit with them and if I get a fresh gust of wind with some beautiful smell, maybe I would expect that the ghost is happy. But on a serious note, for sure, I would like to tell that I think this research work is actually going to open up a very interesting dimension of looking into history, not just in terms of textbooks and writings, but also how the dead can also speak in silence to us.
Has anybody in Scotland picked up on your story?
Well, I mean, I saw that there have been several shares over Twitter, and have been several discussions as well. So, for example, historian William Dalrymple has shared this on Twitter, and there are people sharing their comments and perspectives. And one very interesting happened, that one of the granddaughters of one of the women whom I have discussed in this particular documentary personally contacted me to tell the story, share pictures, and also she shared that how excited and surprised she is to see her grandmother featuring in the documentary, and the untold narratives are coming into the forefront. So which has been quite exciting and encouraging for me as well.
That was Dr. Sayan Dey, who's currently a postdoctoral fellow at the Wits Centre for Diversity Studies at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg in South Africa.